Mr. Vice President, Excellencies, colleagues and friends, I begin by expressing my sorrow regarding the devastating earthquake. My deepest sympathies go to the families of those who lost their lives and best wishes for the recovery of those injured. I acknowledge the High Commissioner's latest report, thank Deputy High Commissioner Al-Nashif for her presentation, and welcome the chair of the CEDAW committee and the two women human rights defenders joining us on the panel. My reports and those of other actors paint a consistent picture of the deteriorating human rights situation in Afghanistan. Regrettably, the Taliban has not rescinded any of its gender oppressive measures, nor the human rights restrictions affecting other groups. Since I last reported in June, further oppressive measures have been imposed on the Afghan population. For example, 1, the introduction of so-called Mahram cards in some provinces, further limiting women's freedom of movement. 2, reports that madrasa education for girls and women will be closed, albeit over time. 3, a new so-called law banning poems which criticize the Taliban leader, praise romantic love, and encourage relationships between men and women. 4, a new directive requiring broadcasters to submit topics for advanced approval and prohibiting commentators from expressing views which contradict Taliban policies. And 5, a clampdown on religious freedom, including forced conversions and blasphemy convictions. There's also been an alarming increase in infliction of corporal punishment. According to the de facto Supreme Court, so far this year, at least 672 people, 547 men and 125 women, have been subjected to judicially sanctioned public flogging, more than double the figure for the same period last year. Clearly, Mr. Vice President, members of the Council, Afghanistan is not a safe place for involuntary return. Therefore, I'm very concerned by some states returning Afghans en masse, including forcibly, and others, including some farther afield, threatening to do so despite the very real risks of persecution, reprisals, or violence in contravention of international customary and treaty law. In this continually deteriorating context, I'm deeply concerned about the creeping normalization of the de facto authorities and by what at times I observe as framing of Afghanistan as a lost cause due to the Taliban having full control with no realistic alternatives on the horizon. Some states appear to see the pragmatic approach being to manage their own strategic security and commercial interests while trying to mitigate the excesses of this regime whose leaders have been indicted by the ICC. Let me be clear. Afghanistan is not a lost cause. It's a test of whether the world will stand firm against gender persecution, a test of whether human rights principles apply universally or only when politically convenient, a test of whether we hear the voices of Afghans, especially women, who continue to valiantly resist despite extraordinary risks, and a test of whether we are prepared to challenge the impunity that has perpetuated violence for decades. How do we stop Afghanistan from becoming a lost cause? It's by using every tool at our disposal. This all-tools approach includes sustained and principled international pressure, incentives for improvement, strengthened support for civil society, expanded humanitarian assistance, international accountability, codification of gender apartheid, and challenges to the Taliban's version of Sharia by religious scholars and Muslim-majority countries. Underpinning all of this must be the centering of women's rights, voices, and agency. One tool that would play an important role in ensuring accountability and deterring further violations is an independent investigative mechanism. Such a mechanism would be complementary to my mandate, the work of UNAMA, the ICC, and other efforts towards justice, truth, and reparations. The gap it would fill would be to collect and preserve evidence, identify alleged perpetrators, support criminal prosecutions, and contribute to other forms of accountability. Mr. Vice President, I've again presented this Council with a grim picture. I hope in future to report more positively, but what is happening in Afghanistan, though serious and challenging, is neither inevitable nor irreversible. It's the result of challenges by the Taliban, certainly, and also by the international community, including this Council. And that means different choices and actions are possible. I urge this Council at this session to meet the courage of Afghans with decisive and effective action. Mr. Vice President, I thank you.